The blue glow surrounding Sarah intensified as she stood facing the government agents on the dark mountain road. What none of them realized was that Sarah's abilities were still evolving, triggered by the extreme stress of the situation and her desperate need to protect her family. Director Collins took several steps back, speaking rapidly into his radio. "Base, this is Collins. We need the specialist team immediately. The subject is displaying capabilities far beyond initial assessment." Sarah could hear every word despite his attempt to speak quietly. Her enhanced senses were becoming more acute by the minute, and she was beginning to understand things about her own body that she never knew before. The electromagnetic energy from the net hadn't just been absorbed. It had somehow upgraded her entire system. "Sarah, honey, what's happening to you?" Elena called from the truck, her voice filled with worry and amazement. Sarah turned slightly toward her mother, and as she did, she noticed that the blue energy field around her was expanding. It now extended about 6 feet in every direction, creating a protective barrier that none of the agents seemed willing to cross. Dr. Webb was frantically documenting everything she observed. "Director, her energy output is increasing exponentially. Whatever she is, she's not just human. This is something entirely new." Agent Morrison had backed away from Sarah's energy field after his initial failed attempt to restrain her. "Sir, I recommend we call for backup. A lot more backup." Director Collins was clearly struggling with a situation that had spiraled completely out of his control. The simple mission to collect a strong teenage girl had turned into an encounter with something beyond their understanding or preparation. "Miss Martinez," Collins said, trying to regain some authority in his voice, "you're displaying abilities that could be dangerous to yourself and others. We have facilities designed to help people like you learn to control these powers safely." Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up the radio chatter from the agent's communication devices. She could hear references to containment protocols, experimental subjects, and indefinite detention. These people weren't interested in helping her. They wanted to study her like a laboratory animal. "I can hear everything you're saying to each other," Sarah announced, causing several agents to look nervously at their radios. "I know what you really want to do with me." The truth was, Sarah was discovering new aspects of her abilities with each passing moment. The stress and adrenaline had pushed her beyond whatever limitations had previously contained her powers. She could feel energy flowing through the ground beneath her feet, connecting her to the earth itself. She could sense the electrical systems in all the vehicles around her. Most remarkably, she could feel the life force of every person present, understanding their intentions through some kind of empathic connection she had never experienced before. "You're afraid of me," she observed, looking directly at Director Collins. "But you're also excited. You think I'm some kind of weapon you can control and use." Collins' mask of professional calm finally slipped. "What you are is too powerful to be left unsupervised. Society needs protection from individuals who could cause mass destruction." "I've never hurt anyone," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the enormous power flowing through her. "The only time I've ever used my abilities was to stop bullies from hurting someone weaker than them. And look how that turned out," Agent Morrison interjected. "Now the whole world knows about you. Do you have any idea what kind of chaos that's going to cause? How many people are going to want to either worship you or destroy you?" Sarah realized that Morrison was right about one thing. Her public exposure had created problems that extended far beyond her own family. But the solution wasn't to disappear into some government facility. As these thoughts ran through her mind, Sarah became aware of something new. Her energy field was picking up electronic signals from far beyond the immediate area. She could sense communications networks, satellite transmissions, and data flows that covered vast distances. Somehow, her abilities had evolved to interface with technology on a global scale. Dr. Webb's tablet suddenly came to life in her hands, displaying information that she hadn't requested. "Director, she's accessing our systems somehow. She's in our network." Sarah wasn't consciously trying to hack their computers, but information was flowing into her mind nonetheless. She could see files about other people like her, individuals with unusual abilities who had been collected by this government division. Most of them were being held in facilities against their will, subjected to endless tests and experiments. "There are others," Sarah said, her voice filled with sadness and anger. "You've been taking people like me for years. Some of them are just children. Colin's expression hardened. Those individuals are being cared for and studied for the greater good. Their abilities are too dangerous to remain uncontrolled. Uncontrolled. Sarah's energy field pulsed brighter. You mean free. You're keeping them prisoner because you're afraid of what they can do. Through her connection to the government's communication networks, Sarah discovered something that made her blood run cold. This roadblock and capture attempt was just the beginning. There were teams being dispatched to collect every member of her extended family, every friend who might have knowledge of her abilities, and even Tommy-chan, the boy she had protected at school. You're planning to take everyone I care about, she said, her voice becoming dangerous. My aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, anyone who might have known about me. Collins didn't deny it. Standard protocol for security containment. Anyone with knowledge of classified individuals must be debriefed and monitored. That was the moment Sarah realized that cooperation was impossible. These people viewed her and everyone she loved as threats to be managed, not as human beings with rights and lives worth protecting. The blue energy around Sarah suddenly expanded dramatically, washing over all the vehicles and agents. Instead of harming them, the energy seemed to pass through them harmlessly, but Sarah could feel herself connecting to every electronic device in the area. All of the agents' radios went silent simultaneously. Their vehicles' engines shut off without warning. Even Dr. Webb's tablet powered down despite having a full battery moments before. What did you do? Collins demanded, but his voice was no longer amplified by his electronic megaphone. I disconnected you, Sarah replied. Your backup teams won't be able to find you or communicate with you. Your vehicles won't start. You're completely isolated. Agent Morrison reached for his weapon, but Sarah's voice stopped him. Don't. I'm not going to hurt you, but I won't let you hurt my family or anyone else. Sarah walked toward the government vehicles, her energy field moving with her. As she approached each SUV, its electronic systems came back online briefly, just long enough for her to access their onboard computers and communication systems. Through these connections, Sarah sent out a message that would change everything. She broadcast a signal to every major news network, social media platform, and communication system she could reach. The message contained evidence from the government's own files about the secret program that captured and imprisoned people with unusual abilities. I'm showing the world what you really do, Sarah announced as she worked. Every person you've taken, every family you've destroyed, every lie you've told to cover it up. It's all going public right now. Director Collins watched in horror as his entire clandestine operation was exposed in real time. Secret facilities, hidden research programs, and years of human rights violations were being revealed to the global media simultaneously. You don't understand what you're doing, Collins said desperately. The panic this will cause, the social disruption, you're going to tear society apart. Sarah paused in her work and looked at him with eyes that seemed far older than her 17 years. Society was already being torn apart. You were just hiding it from people. Now they can make informed decisions about what kind of world they want to live in. As her massive data upload neared completion, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace settling over her. She had made a choice that would change the world forever, but it was the right choice. People with abilities like hers deserved freedom and dignity, not imprisonment and experimentation. Her parents climbed out of the truck and approached her cautiously. The blue energy field around Sarah had become gentle and warm, welcoming them into its protective embrace. What happens now, Mija? Miguel asked, using her childhood nickname. Sarah looked at her parents, then at the government agents who were starting to realize that their entire world had just changed. Now everyone knows the truth. People like me won't have to hide anymore, and people like them won't be able to operate in secret. Dr. Webb, who had been silent during Sarah's revelation, suddenly spoke up. The research data you just released, it's going to cause mass panic. Governments around the world will militarize against people with abilities. You may have just started a war. Sarah considered this soberly. She understood that her actions would have consequences far beyond what she could foresee. But the alternative, allowing the secret imprisonment and abuse to continue, was unacceptable. Then, we'll have to make sure it's a war worth fighting, Sarah replied. A war for freedom, dignity, and the right of all people to exist without fear. As dawn broke over the mountains, Sarah Martinez stood surrounded by her family and faced by government agents whose secret world had just crumbled. She was no longer the hidden girl from Millbrook who tried to blend in and avoid attention. She had become something entirely new, a symbol of resistance against oppression and a beacon of hope for others like her. The blue energy field around her began to fade as Sarah brought her abilities under conscious control. But the power remained, ready to be called upon whenever it was needed to protect the innocent and stand against injustice. In the distance, she could hear helicopters approaching, probably more government forces responding to the communications blackout. But Sarah was no longer afraid. She had discovered the true extent of her abilities, exposed the truth about the secret government program, and made a choice to fight for what was right. Whatever came next, Sarah Martinez was ready to face it. The girl they had tried to restrain had become a force that no government agency or military force could contain. She had become hope itself, and hope, once unleashed, could never be captured again. The world would never be the same, and that was exactly what Sarah had intended. Sometimes, the only way to create a better future was to ensure that the unjust present could no longer continue in the shadows. 3 days after the incident at school, Sarah's life had become a nightmare she never could have imagined. The videos of her confrontation with the bullies had spread across the internet like wildfire, accumulating millions of views and thousands of comments from people trying to explain what they had witnessed. Some called it fake, others suggested special effects, but many believed they were seeing something genuinely extraordinary. Sarah sat in her bedroom, staring out the window at the news vans lined up along her quiet street. Reporters with cameras and microphones had been camping outside her house since yesterday morning, hoping to get an interview with the girl they were calling the immovable teen. Her parents had disconnected the landline after it wouldn't stop ringing, and they had all turned off their cell phones to escape the constant buzzing of notifications. Her father, Miguel Martinez, paced nervously in the living room below. He had taken time off work from his job at the local auto repair shop, knowing that his daughter needed protection from the media circus that had descended upon their family. Sarah's mother, Elena, sat at the kitchen table with her head in her hands, wondering how their careful plans to keep Sarah's abilities secret had crumbled so completely. The Martinez family had been keeping Sarah's unusual strength a secret since she was 7 years old. It had started small, Sarah effortlessly lifting heavy boxes that her father struggled with, or accidentally breaking playground equipment that should have been able to handle the weight of several children. As she grew older, her abilities had grown stronger, but they had managed to keep it hidden by teaching Sarah to hold back, to pretend to be normal. Now, as Sarah watched another news van pull up to join the others, she realized that normal was no longer an option. A soft knock on her bedroom door interrupted her thoughts. "Sarah, honey," her mother's voice called from the hallway. "There are some people here who want to talk to you." Sarah frowned. Her parents had been turning away reporters all day. "Who is it, Mom?" "They say they're from the government," Elena replied, and Sarah could hear the worry in her voice. "They have badges and identification. Your father is talking to them downstairs." Sarah's stomach dropped. This was exactly what her family had been afraid would happen. Her father had always warned her that if the wrong people found out about her abilities, they might try to take her away for testing or experimentation. She had thought he was being paranoid, but now she wasn't so sure. When Sarah came downstairs, she found 3 people in dark suits standing in her living room. 2 men and 1 woman, all looking serious and official. Her father stood nearby, his arms crossed defensively over his chest. The older of the 2 men stepped forward when Sarah appeared. He was tall and thin, with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to analyze everything they looked at. "Miss Martinez," he said with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Director Collins from a special research division of the Department of Health and Human Services. This is Agent Morrison and Dr. Rachel Webb." Sarah noticed that Agent Morrison was a large man who looked more like security than a government worker. Dr. Webb was a woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and a tablet computer in her hands. "We've seen the videos from your school," Director Collins continued. "What you did was quite remarkable. We'd like to talk to you about some opportunities that might interest you." "What kind of opportunities?" Miguel asked, his voice tense with suspicion. Dr. Webb spoke up for the first time. Sarah appears to have some very unique physical capabilities. We run a special facility where young people with unusual abilities can be properly studied and trained. She would receive the best education, medical care, and guidance for developing her potential. You want to take her away, Elena said, moving to stand beside her daughter. She's just a child. She's 17, Agent Morrison pointed out, his voice deep and intimidating. Old enough to make her own decisions about her future. Director Collins raised his hand to calm the discussion. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're simply here to extend an invitation. Sarah, we believe you have abilities that could benefit not just yourself, but society as a whole. Our facility has resources and experts who could help you understand what you're capable of. Sarah looked at the three government agents, then at her worried parents. Something about this whole situation felt wrong to her. What if I don't want to go to your facility? She asked. The polite smile on Director Collins' face flickered slightly. Well, that would be unfortunate. You see, individuals with abilities like yours can sometimes pose certain safety concerns. If we can't provide proper guidance and oversight, other measures might become necessary. The threat was subtle but clear. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that these people weren't really giving her a choice. I need time to think about it, Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. Of course, Director Collins agreed. We'll give you 24 hours to consider our offer. Agent Morrison will remain in the area to answer any questions you might have. After the government agents left, the Martinez family sat in their living room in stunned silence. Through the windows, they could see Agent Morrison getting into a black SUV parked across the street, but he didn't drive away. He was clearly there to watch them. We can't let them take her, Elena whispered, tears forming in her eyes. Miguel nodded grimly. We need to get Sarah somewhere safe while we figure out what to do. That night, while the news crews packed up their equipment and most of the neighborhood settled in for sleep, the Martinez family put their emergency plan into action. They had always known this day might come, and Miguel had prepared for it years ago. At 2 a.m, while Agent Morrison sat in his SUV believing the family was asleep, Miguel quietly started his old pickup truck in the garage. Sarah and Elena slipped out the back door and climbed into the truck bed, hiding under a tarp along with some hastily packed supplies. Miguel drove slowly and carefully out of their neighborhood, taking back roads that he had scouted long ago. He knew every route in and out of Millbrook, and he was confident he could get his family to safety without being followed. Their destination was a small cabin owned by Miguel's brother Carlos, hidden deep in the mountains about 3 hours away from town. Carlos had always known about Sarah's abilities and had helped the family prepare for the possibility that they might need to disappear. But as they drove through the dark mountain roads, Sarah began to notice that they were being followed. Far behind them, barely visible in the darkness, she could make out the headlights of at least 2 vehicles maintaining a steady distance. Dad, she called softly through the truck's rear window. I think they're behind us. Miguel checked his mirrors and cursed under his breath. Somehow, the government agents had anticipated their escape attempt. He pressed harder on the gas pedal, and the old truck groaned as it accelerated up the winding mountain road. The pursuit vehicles immediately responded, closing the distance quickly. These weren't ordinary cars. They were high-performance vehicles designed for exactly this kind of chase. Hold on, Miguel shouted as he took a sharp turn at dangerous speed. The truck's tires squealed against the asphalt, and for a moment Sarah thought they might flip over. But her father's years of working with cars had taught him how to handle a vehicle at its limits, and he managed to keep them on the road. Behind them, the pursuit vehicles had no trouble matching their speed. Sarah could now see that there were 3 black SUVs chasing them, and they were gaining fast. There's a roadblock ahead, Elena called out, pointing through the front windshield. Sure enough, 2 more government vehicles were parked across the narrow mountain road, completely blocking their escape route. Armed agents stood behind the vehicles, their weapons ready but not yet pointed at the fleeing family. Miguel slammed on the brakes, and the truck skidded to a stop about 50 yards from the roadblock. The pursuing SUVs quickly surrounded them, and agents emerged with their weapons drawn. Step out of the vehicle with your hands visible. Agent Morrison's voice boomed through a megaphone. Sarah looked at her terrified parents and made a decision that would change everything. "Stay in the truck," she told them quietly, and before they could protest, she jumped out of the truck bed. "Don't point those guns at my family," she called out, her voice carrying clearly through the night air. Director Collins emerged from one of the SUVs, his expression no longer polite. "Miss Martinez, you and your parents have made this much more difficult than it needed to be. We had hoped to handle this situation diplomatically. You call threatening to take me away from my family diplomatic?" Sarah shot back. "Your abilities make you a person of national interest," Collins replied. "Whether you come with us willingly or not, you are coming with us." Sarah felt the familiar surge of strength flowing through her body, but this time it was different. Her emotion and desperation seemed to amplify her abilities in ways she had never experienced before. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Collins nodded to Agent Morrison, who began advancing towards Sarah with metal restraints in his hands. "Miss Martinez, please don't make this harder than it has to be." When Morrison was about 10 feet away from her, Sarah held up her hand. "Stop right there." Morrison ignored her warning and continued forward. That was when he discovered just how much Sarah's abilities had grown under stress. As Morrison reached for her, Sarah simply stood her ground. But this time, when he tried to grab her, something extraordinary happened. An invisible force seemed to emanate from Sarah's body, and Morrison was suddenly unable to move any closer to her. It was as if he had run into an invisible wall. Morrison pushed harder, his face straining with effort, but he couldn't advance even an inch towards Sarah. The other agents watched in amazement as their colleague struggled against an unseen barrier. "What is she doing?" one of them whispered. Dr. Webb stepped forward, her tablet forgotten as she stared at Sarah with scientific fascination. "She's generating some kind of localized field effect. This is far beyond simple physical strength." Director Collins' expression shifted from annoyance to something much more intense. "Restrain her immediately. Use the electromagnetic net." Two agents moved toward a special device mounted on one of the SUVs. Sarah didn't know what an electromagnetic net was, but the urgency in Collins' voice told her it was something designed specifically for people like her. That was when Sarah's abilities manifested in a way that surprised everyone, including herself. As the agents activated their device, Sarah felt a strange tingling sensation throughout her body. Without consciously deciding to do it, she began to glow with a soft, blue light. The electromagnetic net fired toward her, but instead of restraining her, the energy was absorbed into the blue aura surrounding her body. Sarah felt stronger and more alert than she had ever felt in her life. "Impossible," Dr. Webb breathed, frantically taking notes on her tablet. "She's absorbing the electromagnetic energy and converting it somehow." Sarah looked at the frightened faces of the government agents and realized that she had just discovered an entirely new aspect of her abilities. She wasn't just physically strong. She could apparently manipulate energy in ways that no one, including herself, understood. "Let my parents go," she said, her voice now carrying an otherworldly quality that made everyone present take a step back. "They haven't done anything wrong." Director Collins was quickly reassessing the situation. This teenager was far more powerful than their intelligence had suggested, and the standard containment protocols were clearly inadequate. "Miss Martinez," he said carefully, "I think we need to have a very different conversation." Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small town of Millbrook. At 17, she possessed an unusual strength that made her father nervous and her classmates whisper behind her back. Nobody knew where this power came from, but Sarah could lift things that grown men struggled with and had reflexes faster than anyone had ever seen. The trouble started on a rainy Tuesday morning at Millbrook High School. Sarah was sitting in her chemistry class, trying to focus on the lesson about molecular bonds, when she heard crying from the hallway. The sound was soft but desperate, and it made her heart race with concern. She raised her hand to ask permission to use the restroom, but her teacher, Mr. Davidson, was too busy explaining complex formulas to notice. The crying grew louder, and Sarah could hear what sounded like someone being pushed around. Her enhanced hearing picked up words that made her blood boil, cruel insults, and threats directed at someone who sounded very young. Without thinking twice, Sarah stood up from her desk, causing it to screech loudly across the floor. Every student in the class turned to stare at her. "Where do you think you're going, Miss Martinez?" Mr. Davidson asked, his voice sharp with annoyance. "We're in the middle of an important lesson." Sarah's jaw tightened as she heard another sob from the hallway, followed by the sound of books hitting the floor. "Someone needs help," she said simply, her voice steady but her eyes blazing with determination. "Sit down immediately, or you'll be sent to the principal's office," Mr. Davidson warned, pointing his finger at her chair. But Sarah was already moving toward the door. In the hallway, she found exactly what she had feared. 3 older boys from the football team had cornered a small freshman named Tommy Chun. Tommy was on his knees, trying to gather his scattered books while tears streamed down his face. His glasses were broken, lying twisted on the linoleum floor. "Please just leave me alone," Tommy whispered, his voice shaking with fear. The biggest of the 3 boys, Jake Morrison, laughed cruelly. "Not until you do our homework for the rest of the month, little man. And if you tell anyone about this, things will get much worse for you." Sarah stepped into view, her presence immediately commanding attention. "Let him go," she said, her voice calm but carrying an undertone that made the bullies pause. Jake turned to face her, his expression shifting from amusement to irritation. "This doesn't concern you, Martinez. Walk away before you get hurt." "I'm not walking anywhere," Sarah replied, moving closer to Tommy and helping him to his feet. "You 3 need to apologize to Tommy and leave him alone." The second bully, Marcus Webb, snorted with laughter. "Or what? You'll tell the principal? We're not scared of some weird girl." What happened next would be talked about in Millbrook for years to come. Jake reached out to grab Sarah's arm, intending to push her aside. But when his hand made contact with her, something extraordinary occurred. Sarah didn't just resist his push. She remained completely immovable, as if she were made of solid stone. Jake's eyes widened in surprise, and he tried again, this time using both hands and all his strength. Sarah didn't budge even an inch. It was as if he were trying to move a mountain. "What the hell?" Marcus gasped, staring in disbelief. The third bully, David Rodriguez, decided to join in. Both he and Marcus grabbed onto Jake, and all 3 boys pulled and pushed against Sarah with everything they had. Students began gathering in the hallway, drawn by the commotion. Phones came out as classmates started recording what they were witnessing. Sarah stood perfectly still, protecting Tommy behind her, while 3 large football players struggled uselessly against her. She wasn't even breathing hard, while they were turning red from exertion. "How is she doing this?" someone whispered from the growing crowd. Mr. Davidson appeared in the hallway, having finally noticed the disturbance. "What is going on here?" he demanded. But his voice trailed off as he saw the impossible scene before him. The 3 bullies were now completely exhausted, panting and sweating from their failed attempts to move Sarah. Jake stumbled backward, staring at her with a mixture of fear and confusion. "She's some kind of freak," he breathed, pointing a shaking finger at Sarah. Sarah finally moved, stepping forward with fluid grace. The crowd instinctively moved back, creating a wider circle around the confrontation. Tommy remained behind her, clutching his broken glasses and watching with amazement as this girl defended him against impossible odds. "I gave you a chance to apologize," Sarah said, her voice still eerily calm. "Now I'm telling you, if you ever touch Tommy again, or if you bully anyone else in this school, you'll have to deal with me. And next time, I might not be so gentle." The word gentle sent chills down everyone's spine, because Sarah hadn't done anything that could be considered aggressive. She had simply stood there, immovable as a mountain, while 3 strong boys exhausted themselves trying to push her around. Jake's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Being made to look weak in front of the entire school was more than his ego could handle. "This isn't over," he snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. Deep down, he was terrified of this strange girl who seemed to possess impossible strength. As the 3 bullies retreated, the crowd remained, buzzing with excitement and confusion. Videos of the incident were already being uploaded to social media, spreading the impossible footage far beyond the walls of Millbrook High School. Sarah knelt down next to Tommy, helping him collect his books. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, her voice now soft and caring, completely different from the steely tone she had used with the bullies. Tommy nodded, still too amazed to speak properly. "Thank you," he finally managed to whisper. How did you do that? Sarah paused, looking at the crowd of students who were still staring at her with a mixture of awe and fear. She realized that her secret was out now. There was no going back to being just another student at Millbrook High School. I don't know, she answered honestly. And for the first time since the incident began, there was uncertainty in her voice. The truth was, Sarah had always known she was different, but she had never displayed her abilities so publicly before. Her parents had taught her to hide her strength, to blend in, and never draw attention to herself. But seeing Tommy being bullied had triggered something inside her that she couldn't control. As she helped Tommy to his feet, Sarah noticed that her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear or exhaustion, but from the realization that everything in her life had just changed forever. The secret she had kept hidden for 17 years was now recorded on dozens of phones and would soon be seen by thousands of people. Principal Hayes arrived on the scene, having been called by Mr. Davidson. He looked around at the dispersing crowd and the three defeated-looking football players, trying to piece together what had happened. "Miss Martinez," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "I need you to come to my office immediately." Sarah nodded, knowing this conversation was inevitable. As she walked toward the principal's office with Tommy beside her, she could hear the excited chatter of students behind them. Words like impossible, superhuman, and unbelievable floated through the air. What Sarah didn't know was that this incident was just the beginning. The videos of her standing immovable against three strong boys would go viral within hours, catching the attention of people far more dangerous than high school bullies. Government agencies, research facilities, and organizations with dark intentions would soon learn about the teenage girl in Millbrook who possessed impossible strength. But, for now, as she sat in Principal Hayes' office, answering questions she didn't have answers to, Sarah Martinez was simply a 17-year-old girl who had stood up for someone who needed help. She had no idea that her act of kindness would soon put her at the center of a conflict that would test the limits of her mysterious abilities and force her to make choices that would change not just her own life, but the lives of everyone she cared about.